Today, we are strapping in for a high-stakes collision. It's a fight that pits a major European nation's drive for really rapid content enforcement against, well, against one of the world's most powerful internet infrastructure companies.
Yeah.
We are diving into the sources detailing this extraordinary standoff between Cloudflare and Italy's controversial Piracy Shield law.
This is a classic battle of speed versus stability, but, the stakes have been cranked up to the absolute maximum.
Right.
We are looking at Cloudflare getting hit with a massive $14.2 million fine, which their CEO said was about $17 million, all for refusing one specific blocking order.
Just one.
Just one. And in response, they're threatening to pull critical services, even cybersecurity for the upcoming Olympics, out of the entire country.
That fine is not just a slap on the wrist. I mean, it's 1% of their global annual turnover. That's essentially the maximum penalty they could possibly face.
It is.
But if Italy's communications agency, AGCOM, is simply asking them to block traffic to known pirate sites, why would Cloudflare risk all this? The financial and political blowback.
It revolves around a single core technical issue, DNS resolution. Specifically, Cloudflare's incredibly popular 1.1.1.1 public DNS resolver.
Okay.
Italy's Piracy Shield system demands that infrastructure providers like Cloudflare not only disable DNS resolution, which is one thing, but also the traffic routing to specific IP addresses.
And Cloudflare is arguing that complying, especially with the timeline involved, fundamentally undermines the whole open functionality of the global internet.
A reliability, yeah.
So our mission today, for you, the listener, is to understand not just the mechanics of DNS blocking the internet's phone book, basically, but the really critical legal and technical implications of speed. Specifically, how Italy's demand for automated rapid enforcement creates all this collateral damage. We need to figure out why a 30-minute rule for blocking content has, well, turned into a constitutional crisis for internet freedom.
Okay, so let's start with that immediate trigger then.
Exactly. The action really started when AGCOM announced that $14.2 million fine against Cloudflare for refusing a blocking order from early 2025.
And that refusal, in AGCOM's eyes, was a serious violation of this Piracy Shield law.
Which was adopted in 2024.
Right. And that law is significant because it grants AGCOM these extremely broad and powerful blocking powers. Like you said, it requires disabling both the domain name resolution and the traffic routing to IP addresses that copyright holders report.
And that fine, the 1% of turnover, it just shows how serious the regulator is about enforcing this.
Absolutely.
But the element that truly defines this whole conflict, the technical requirement that makes Cloudflare's position so difficult, is that timeline.
The 30 minutes.
This law demands that these domains and IP addresses must be blocked within 30 minutes of notification. 30 minutes. I mean, that is just lightning-fast automated enforcement.
And AGCOM, for its part, essentially just shrugged off Cloudflare's complaints about how hard that is to do.
So what was their rationale?
Well, their view was that the blocking imposes no risk on legitimate websites because, as they see it, the targeted IP addresses were all uniquely and solely intended for copyright infringement.
They believe the issue is contained.
Pretty much. That it's contained and that Cloudflare's objections are just, them not wanting to comply.
But is that claim that these IP addresses are only used for piracy, is that even technically realistic in, the modern era of shared hosting and CDNs?
That is precisely the crux of the technical argument. And the data suggests, no, it's not realistic at all.
Okay.
The scale AGCOM is operating at is massive. In just the last couple of years, Piracy Shield has disabled over 65,000 domain names and about 14,000 IP addresses.
Wow.
And while that shows, effective enforcement against piracy on one hand, it highlights the immense potential for error if due diligence is skipped for the sake of speed.
And this isn't just about Cloudflare, is it?
Not at all. It's important to remember Italy has already gone after others. Google has also been ordered to implement DNS-level blocking in the past. This is targeting the entire infrastructure layer.
So let's pivot then and look at Cloudflare's defense. Why is absorbing a $14.2 million fine somehow less damaging than just complying with the Italian mandate? It has to come down to scale.
That's all about scale.
Cloudflare handles roughly 200 billion daily requests to its 1.1.1.1 DNS system.
Exactly. So to enforce Italy's 30-minute blocking rule, Cloudflare would have to introduce a filter that applies to those 200 billion requests globally.
A global filter for one country's law.
A global filter. To do that effectively, they'd need this heavy-duty inspection layer, essentially forcing every single user query from Tokyo to Toronto through a gatekeeper checking against the Italian block list.
Which adds latency.
A lot of latency. That overhead applied across all their data centers translates directly into a slower experience for everyone. It makes their service globally less competitive, less reliable, which is terrible for their business and for the open internet.
The technical difficulty is one thing, but their CEO, Matthew Prince, went much further on the political front. He called this requirement a mandate to fully censor from the internet any sites a shadowy cabal of European media elites deemed against their interests.
That is very strong language.
It is.
But it speaks to the perceived threat of global censorship. Prince specifically argued that the order required them to censor their 1.1.1.1 resolver, meaning it risked blacking out any site on the internet if the system made a mistake.
And he also stressed the lack of judicial oversight.
Yes. The lack of due process, the lack of transparency in the entire scheme, which connects directly to the legal framework they're trying to protect.
This brings us to the core legal concept, right? The principle of the mere conduit. For those of us who aren't, deeply embedded in EU internet law, what is the legal importance of that?
This is the foundation of infrastructure law in the European Union. It was established by the EU e-commerce directive. And it basically states that infrastructure providers, ISPs, DNS resolvers are merely conduits. They're just the pipes, the routing services. And crucially, they are legally shielded from liability for the content flowing through those pipes.
I see.
Cloudflare is arguing that Italy's Piracy Shield is trying to shatter that established legal precedent. It's fundamentally shifting the responsibility and the liability from the content source to the neutral infrastructure layer.
So it's not just about slowing down the internet. It's about Italy forcing Cloudflare to become a kind of global editor or enforcer rather than a neutral network provider.
Precisely. And when enforcement has to be that fast, 30 minutes, the required legal and technical checks just can't happen. And that makes taking on that liability particularly dangerous.
And unfortunately for AGCOM, their assertion that the blocking imposed no risk on legitimate websites has already been proven wrong in real time. This work is really interesting.
Absolutely. The data on collateral damage is, it's damning. A September 2025 report from independent researchers who analyzed the Piracy Shield system found concrete evidence of overblocking.
What did they find?
They found hundreds of legitimate websites unknowingly affected by blocking, alongside unknown operators experiencing service disruption.
When the researchers talk about polluted address ranges,
Yeah.
can you clarify what that means for, the average user? Are we talking about IP addresses being shared?
That's precisely right. In modern internet architecture, IP addresses are often dynamically assigned or shared across massive cloud infrastructure.
Right.
So a polluted address range is a block of IPs that might contain one pirate site, but that same block is also hosting hundreds of totally legitimate, unrelated e-commerce sites or blogs or small businesses.
And if you're trying to act in 30 minutes, you just block the whole range?
You block the whole range. It's like taking down an entire apartment complex to catch one illegal tenant.
And the most visceral evidence of this came from the Computer Communications Industry Association, the CCIA, which represents major tech companies like Cloudflare and Google.
Yes, they've been highly critical of the law, and they cited one catastrophic incident in October 2024.
What happened?
The system's automated tools mistakenly blocked Google Drive.
Wait, all of Google Drive? For the whole country?
For the entire country. A staggering 3-hour blackout for all Italian users trying to access it, with partial blocking lasting up to 12 hours.
3 hours of total darkness for Google Drive. That's not a glitch. That's a catastrophic operational failure. It would impact millions of people.
It did. And the scale of that failure alone proves Cloudflare's argument that the system is fundamentally unsafe. It directly proves the CCIA's point that the 30-minute blocking window leaves extremely limited time for careful verification.
And the verification issue is made even worse by who built the platform, isn't it?
It is. The CCIA pointed out that the Piracy Shield platform was actually developed by a company affiliated with Lega Serie A, that's Italy's top football league.
So the Football League helped build the anti-piracy tool.
Yes, and considering that same league is one of the very few entities authorized to report piracy, it raises serious questions about transparency and conflict of interest.
You have an enforcement mechanism that is tied directly to the commercial interests of the rights holder.
You're effectively deputizing them to implement censorship.
So we have a system that is legally flawed, technically dangerous, and developed by a party with, a clear conflict of interest. And this brings us to Cloudflare's ultimate leverage, the threat of total withdrawal.
Yeah, Matthew Prince's list of potential actions they're considering, it's essentially threatening digital economic fallout for Italy. He laid out four massive
This
points.
first one, discontinuing millions of dollars in pro bono cybersecurity services for the upcoming Milano-Cortina Olympics. That's a massive hit to national security for a huge global event.
A huge hit. Second, they might discontinue their free cybersecurity services for all Italy-based users. That leaves countless small businesses and websites just exposed to threats.
Then we get into the physical threats.
Right. Third, removing all servers from Italian cities entirely.
And fourth, just terminating all plans to build an Italian Cloudflare office or make any future investments in the country. The CEO summed it up with that harsh phrase, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
It's a declaration of digital warfare, really. It suggests Italy's choices will lead to severe, self-inflicted economic damage.
Now, it's important to note that Cloudflare isn't alone in this pushback.
No, the local Italian ISPs, the ones forced to implement these block orders, they're making very similar legal arguments, especially around that mere conduit principle.
So what are the ISPs saying? Are they just refusing to fight piracy, or are they proposing some alternatives?
Well, they're arguing that the law forces them into filtering in tasks that collide with individual freedoms and that it directly contradicts that core European legislation we talked about.
But the sources say that Italy's law is different.
It is. Unlike in the rest of the EU, Italy has expressly established criminal liability for ISPs in this context, which massively increases the pressure on them to just comply with the 30-minute order, no questions asked.
But the ISPs have offered what sound like, constructive, technically superior alternatives to just brute force DNS blocking.
They absolutely have. They argue for using better tools that are more targeted and that preserve the functionality of the open internet.
Like what?
Things like leveraging existing criminal law, improving cooperation between states to target the actual sources of the piracy, and crucially, using digital solutions that downgrade the quality of the signal broadcast via illegal streaming websites.
Signal degradation. It's interesting. It's more of a surgical strike.
Exactly.
So instead of taking down the internet's phone book for an entire country, you just make the pirate stream unwatchable. It hits the pirate's business model without affecting legitimate sites.
Exactly. It's a technical approach that respects the difference between addressing the symptom and, attacking the entire infrastructure. It allows enforcement to be targeted and temporary rather than system-wide and potentially catastrophic like we saw with the Google Drive blackout.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out from the fine and the threats? This deep dive really highlights that fundamental friction between the desire for automated, lightning-swift enforcement, that 30-minute requirement, and the absolute necessity of due process and system reliability in our foundational internet infrastructure.
The sources show us a clear tension. The Piracy Shield, it has been technically successful in blocking thousands of pirate domains.
Right.
But that success comes at the steep price of system integrity and collateral damage, exemplified by that 3-hour blackout of a major cloud service. It raises an important question for policymakers everywhere. At what cost to foundational principles like due process and the integrity of core services like DNS are we willing to achieve that enforcement speed?
And that question brings us to the closing thought for you, the listener. If automation and speed really are the unavoidable future of global copyright enforcement, how can the global tech industry, and all of us who rely on it, effectively enforce that bedrock principle of the mere conduit? How do we ensure that the ultimate power to censor or block content remains decentralized and subject to rigorous judicial review, rather than being handed over to rights holders and automated lightning-fast systems that have already proven they can take down major global services on a whim? That's something that will define the next decade of internet governance.